Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to BioData Talks, our webinar series that connects you with thought leaders, founders and experts who've created successful teams and businesses in biodata and genomics. I'm Jo Mills. I'm the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Centre Manager at the Wellcome Genome Campus, and it's a real privilege to be future gazing today with two experts from technology firm Atos to explore the promise of edge technologies in life sciences innovation. We're thrilled that you're joining us today on our journey of discovery and that we have people online from all over the globe. So to get our interactive conversation underway, please jump into the chat box and let us know where you're joining us from. And I'll look forward to seeing all those answers popping up on the screen shortly. Before I introduce you to our two panelists today, I'd like to highlight a couple of points to note to help us all get the most from today's session. Firstly, my colleague Anka is behind the scenes today, making sure everything runs smoothly. She currently has everyone muted so that we're free from all of those distractions in the background. We're using Zoom today as the platform for the session, and many of you will be familiar with Zoom, but for those of you who aren't, we really recommend that you use Speaker View to view this session properly. And you can set this by clicking on the button at the top right of your screen right now. As I just mentioned, we want to make this session as interactive as possible, so it is more valuable and interesting for you. So please do have a think about the questions that you really like to ask our speakers today, and either write them in the chat box so that I can ask our panelists, or indicate that you have a question that you'd like to ask, and we'll invite you to unmute yourself so you can ask it live. Finally, a reminder that we're making a recording of this webinar so that you and others can access it later. So if you do ask a question live, please bear in mind that your voice will appear on the recording and also your image if your camera's switched on. So I'm delighted to welcome our two panelists today. We have joining us Dr. Natalia Jimenez, who's the industry lead for life sciences at Atos, and also Albert Trill, who is high performance compute specialist at Atos. To put our discussion today into some context, emerging computing technologies such as HPC, HPDA, BD, AI, and QC, gosh, what a lot of abbreviations here, they open many possibilities to many disciplines. And their practical application requires a mixed knowledge between the technology and the field of application. And actually that mixed knowledge is really not very easy to achieve. With all of these possibilities in mind, Atos has decided to create a centre of excellence in life sciences, focusing on HPC, AI and quantum, to bring all these technologies closer to research in life sciences and also in clinical organisations, to explore and test novel use cases. And we're thrilled actually that Life Sciences Centre of Excellence will actually be based on our campus in due course. Before we dive into exploring each of these technologies, I'm going to ask Natalia and Albert to introduce themselves as leaders of this new venture and share with us why they are working on this together. So Natalia, let's start with you. You're a life scientist by background and training, so tell us about your journey towards becoming life sciences lead at Atos, and also what's prompted you to bring the Life Sciences Centre of Excellence into reality.
Hello, everybody. Yes, well, my background is in research, as you mentioned. So I did my master's degree in biochemistry and then the PhD in molecular biology, but working in bioinformatics. Most of the time belonging to the Spanish Bioinformatics Institute, that nowadays is the Spanish Elixir node. After 14 years working in that environment, well, I had the opportunity to join Atos. At the beginning, I was very reluctant to that opportunity because I didn't understand why an IT company was interested in my profile. But then I discovered that they were working in life sciences projects, such as one called Future Clinic, that was aiming to integrate the genomics data into the clinical settings. So that's why I decided to embrace the challenge and move to Atos to be the link between researchers and technologists. And well, and from the very beginning, we knew that to create a kind of hub around life sciences was very important. So I've been pursuing that opportunity for long years, but now it's a realization.
Adalba, you're an expert in high performance computing. So what's attracted you to divert your skills and expertise in computing towards the big problems of data in life sciences?
Well, hello everybody. My beginnings with HPC were in the areas of computer-aided engineering, as my education is in industrial engineering, doing things like structures, materials, car crash test, and this kind of things. But once I got into HPC, it became clear that one of the fields that were most demanding in terms of compute power was computational chemistry, especially in quantum chemistry. This was in the 90s. And the last 10, 15 years, bioinformatics has replaced chemistry as one of the fields that has highest demands in computing. So let's say that the answer is that I have been driven by the market, but also because it's a very interesting field, of course, and it's very challenging to contribute to improve health. Yeah.
Cool. So just a reminder to everyone out there that we'd like to move on to your questions as quickly as possible. So just a quick reminder to note that if you would like to ask a question to either Natalia or to Albert, please do jot these in the chat box and or indicate that you'd like to ask a question, and we'll be able to unmute you to ask it live if you wish. So I'm going to start with a question now, and then we will actually move on to a question that was submitted to us in advance by Nehal. But first, my question. So my question is about the technologies. We hear much about the promising new technologies of the future, such as high performance computing, edge computing, and quantum computing. Can you explain for us, please, very briefly, what these technologies are and what makes them so different from current computing technologies?
Well, that is quite challenging to explain several technologies in few sentences. Well, let's say HPC, high performance computing. I think that it brings two different things. For one side, we have big processing power together with the ability to handle massive data. This is, I think, evident. What it's not so evident is that HPC always provides new methods of solving problems. I will explain this with one example. So I guess that more or less everybody knows how to solve a Sudoku. This is something that you can also make a computer program. But if you want to solve this with a computer, there is a different way of doing this, which is to calculate all the possible solutions of a Sudoku and just pick the one that fits all the rules of the game. This is something that we'll never do by hand because it will take years to write down with a pencil all the combinations of numbers and so on. But if you have a computer, even a laptop computer, it's something that it provides a new method of solving a problem. And with a supercomputer, this is even more, let's say, possible, that you create algorithms of brute force, of statistical ways of solving problems. So this is for HPC, basically. In terms of artificial intelligence, the idea here is to try to mimetize the human behavior. So, for example, humans do not interact between us through Unix commands. We use natural language. And this is something that it's already viable and that we can all try with the Google Assistant or the Amazon Alexa or so on. And we can ask for the weather prediction for tomorrow just with these words. But the most interesting part of the human behavior is the ability to learn. So in terms of computing, this is what it's called deep learning, where the system is able to learn usually through techniques such as neural networks and giving them enough data, they can just learn the rules of the game and be able, for example, to drive an autonomous car which has human intervention. And we can apply this principle, for example, to diagnosis by image, just training the system with thousands of images and saying this is a colon cancer, this is not. And at the end, when you have the system properly trained, because this is not easy, then you just put a case and the system is able to infer with a high degree of success if this is or not colon cancer or whatever. So there is also another technique, which is edge computing, which is basically to put the compute power beside the device that generates the data. Typical example to understand this is I have a video camera for security or whatever that is generating a video, and instead of sending this through a stream of video to the data center and have, for example, an artificial intelligence system that is analyzing the images to see if somebody is doing a bad thing or whatever, you can put an edge computer beside the video camera and just process a video in real time, and this edge server, it sends an alert if something is going wrong. And finally, for quantum computing, this is thing really different. I would say innovative and disruptive. And this is not a matter of another language of programming or another kind of processor that it will make our program go at the speed of light. It's just a new way of solving problems. Basically, the idea is that you apply the quantum principles like entanglement and this kind of things, so very complex one. And for example, you have a problem that it's unsolvable because of the complexity. For example, you have a problem that it has an exponential complexity, so it means that within a certain size, it's impossible to solve the problem. But if you find a quantum algorithm, it might happen that this is not exponential, but it's linear or polynomial, and then you can solve this problem that it was not possible to solve before. So this is really something new in our fields.
Brilliant. We're going to go head over now to Nehal, who I believe is joining us today from Egypt. Submitted a question in advance. So if we can head over to Nehal. Nehal, please do say hello and ask your question.
Yeah, hello everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes, fantastic.
Okay, great. So I have two questions now. The first one is, what are the future prospects of edge technologies in the era of big data, especially the multi-omics data? And the other thing is related to, as you mentioned, bioinformatics. So how things can be much easier in handling this big data in the prospect of biologists. You know, like biologists are not so familiar with the computer science thing and stuff. So do you have any kind of perspectives regarding this? Thank you.
Well, I can take the first, or please go ahead, Albert.
No, for you, Natalia.
Yeah, well, I will say that one of the more important advantages of edge computing is, as Albert mentioned before, the possibility of bringing the compute where the data is being produced. And the multi-omics environment, you mean maybe genomics, metabolomics, proteomics data, each one of these kind of data being produced by a different high throughput device. So I do see edge computing as a way to process the raw data to get at least an order of magnitude less of the size of the data, and then to be able to move or to manage the data more easily. So it's from my point of view, it's more like a pre-processing step in managing multi-omics data. Albert, can you add on that?
No, I'm thinking in applications like Now there are appearing some kind of portable sequencers, for example, so it makes sense to attach edge computing power to these portable devices. This would be an interesting thing, for example, to provide now COVID tests also with some kind of process attached to the devices. So, well, we can imagine many situations where edge computing can be interesting with together with genomics, for sure. Yeah.
Fantastic. We've got some questions that are coming in on the chat actually now. So, so I'm going to go to a question from Treyasa, who said, can you please share with us some examples or some case studies of what you can or have done so far with exploring how these technologies might address data challenges in life sciences?
Yeah, indeed. We have a very recent example working together with a research organization, the National Centre for Biotechnology, and it was a press release last week. We managed through high performance computing to accelerate the process of, the processing of images taken from the electron microscope. So they are working in 3D electron microscopy, meaning that they take images of a sample molecule, and they are able to reconstruct the 3D model of a particle. In this case, the particle was the spike protein of a SARS-CoV-2, which made the use case more relevant even. And I would like to highlight the fact that to do this case study, we count on the support from Intel because they gave us a shared memory system to fight against COVID-19.
Fantastic, fantastic. So tell us a little bit about, you know, how quickly or how easily were you able to kind of pivot the technology to actually help support work and the global efforts in tackling COVID-19? You know, because obviously there's some very big challenges posed by that. Yeah,
indeed. So, well, one is the case I mentioned before, but we have also a very interesting case with an organization, also a research organization in Senegal, and they are supercomputing kind of users, but they were struggling to get power and to get water cooling for their supercomputer. But they were urged to do something around COVID-19 because they had a mathematical model to predict the spreading of the disease. So yes, as you mentioned, things need to pivot very, very quickly in order to be able to give them access to resources for them not to be struggling to deliver the results.
Fantastic. So do you see a huge potential impact of being able to address really big challenges with these kinds of new technologies? It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on what this will ultimately mean for our health.
Yeah. Albert, can you comment on that?
I'm more oriented to technology, but for the health questions, I leave this one for you. But basically, I think that the potential of the technology, it's the limit is the imagination. So if we think where we can use AI or quantum computing or so, and what it will be the benefits of this, is something that it's very difficult to predict, at least for my side. This is always that it happens when we have some speech and there is a journalist, and the very first question is always how this will change our lives. So I do not have a crystal ball, but for sure this will change the way that we do science. And I think the concept of how this will affect is the concept behind precision medicine. So I think it will be able to predict illness, to prevent some diseases because you have some mutations in your genome. So before you develop the illness, you can do something. This kind of things that now it looks very futuristic. It's really happening now. So my point of view is that imagination, it's only the limit.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
well, can I add from that? Well, I think that acceleration is a good point in terms of how to apply technology to healthcare, because thanks to the acceleration provided by these new technologies, the timings, for example, to get actionable insights from genomics data are compatible with the clinical times, for example, for diagnosis or for treatment purposes. So that's key. Also the simulation. The simulation, for example, imagine that you want to train junior surgeons in a very difficult or complex procedure. The use of augmented reality, segmentation techniques, virtual reality in real time to be able to train them, and potentially using this in a real theater. Also, as I mentioned before, for 3D electron microscopy. So the stratification of patients in different cohorts, depending on their risk of having a specific disease, attending to, and this could be predicted by an AI system. Mm-hmm. So as Albert said, sky is the limit. So it's only, you can imagine, so if you can imagine it, it is possible.
So one of the key features in the landscape, and you mentioned a little bit before about your collaboration with Intel, and one of the key features of the landscape of genomics and biodata and life sciences research at the moment is the need to collaborate. So tell us a little bit more about who you're collaborating with through the Life Sciences Centre of Excellence, and what do you see the collaborations looking like, and where do you see the innovations lying? And that was a question that actually came to us on the chat from John. So thank you, John, for that question.
Well, I think we have, let's say, two kinds of collaborations. One is the technology collaborations with our partners. For this center, we are collaborating mainly with Intel, NVIDIA, and NetApp, that they are complementing our capabilities in AI, HPC, and quantum. With Intel, as mentioned, we have this special collaboration with the fight against COVID. And we have another research collaborations that I think, Natalia, you can better explain.
Yeah. For example, we have been collaborating for more than a decade now with the National Centre for Genomic Analysis, which is the second largest center in Europe in terms of sequencing capabilities after the Sanger Institute. And they are working in genomic sequencing, normally human sequencing, delivering services to hospitals, healthcare organizations, but also they are working in very interesting projects, such as the sequencing of the albino gorilla or the Iberian lynx, as you may know. Mm-hmm. Well, we are working with the healthcare and hospitals organizations, and in that sense, we are helping them to integrate genomics workflow into the clinical settings. So they are using this genomics for rare diseases and cancer mainly, and they are able to diagnose or prescribe personalized treatments thanks to that. I would like to also to highlight a collaboration with an institute which is focusing in the genomics of grape wine to produce better wines. So they are focusing in identifying what are the genomics variants that are related to the organoleptic properties of wine. So we can say that we are helping them somehow to produce better wines.
Some really great examples, and just the diversity of possibilities, you know, it's quite, it's quite, huge really for us to think of, and quite sort of visionary. And just a reminder to everyone, please, to pop your questions onto the chat if you have further questions for Natalia and Albert. I guess with all of these possibilities in mind, founding the Life Sciences Centre of Excellence seems like an obvious step, but I guess it was very much an entrepreneurial venture within Atos. So how did you gain the buy-in from your leadership to actually get such a project underway?
Well, the real answer to that question, I can tell you, having a coffee next time we meet. So now I'm going to be politically correct. Well, the thing is that, yes, at the moment we were thinking of setting up this Center of Excellence, we took the opportunity because we have already in Atos something that is called the Center for Excellence in Parallel Programming. Sorry, Albert, I always confuse with that.
Performance programming.
Performance programming, okay. Yeah, it's called CEPP. And this is a real asset within Atos. So what we decided was to, at the moment we were preparing the pitch to our top managers, to let them know that the operational model would be exactly the same, so that they will see our center with very good eyes. At the moment we were pitching them about that, there were a huge, let's say, internal reorganization within Atos in vertical industries, being health and life sciences one of them. So we presented this center as a push to realize or to implement the industrialization or verticalization of this. So it was that was the process. And in truth, well, I do see this center as a health and life sciences R&D branch of Atos. I do see this as having the flexibility that we need in order to co-innovate with researchers worldwide.
So it's really important for you then to actually embed this life sciences center of excellence within an ecosystem. So tell us a little bit more about your thinking around embedding in an ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a very good one. Yeah, when we were presenting our business case to the top managers, they were asking us, why in Cambridge, why in BioData, why not in London? Because we have beautiful offices in London. Everything is already set up. So we could have started from day one in our offices in London. And our answer was straightforward. If we go to London to create this center, we are starting from scratch. While if we organize that with a BioData in the Genome Campus, then we are going to be part of an ecosystem from day one. It was clear for us.
Yeah, fantastic. I've got a question that's just come in on the chat from Jack, who says, thank you both Natalia and Albert for being such wonderful panel members. And he says, you've both given great insights into how machine learning and HPC could impact biomedical research in human health. He's curious though, if you had a blank check and could start a moonshot project in this field, right now, where would you start today?
Wow, that's a very good question.
Who's going to take that one first?
Albert.
Where to start? Well, I think that there is an initial task of looking and discovering where all these technologies must be applied in the specific areas. And this is a kind of exercise that is not easy to do, especially if you think in quantum computing and these kind of things. But I think the very first thing is to try to take a look at the genomics pipeline and try to apply these technologies at maximum in all this space. This is, I think, the point I would start.
I would go for quantum as well, but I would be more on the drug discovery use case instead of a genomics one, or combining both at the same time, but definitely quantum. I would go for quantum technology.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, quantum computing doesn't exist yet today. So how far away in the future is it? And when will it actually create a breakthrough in these fields and fields like genomics?
Right now, really nobody knows. So quantum computing right now is in the industrialization phase. So all the theory about quantum computing was developed in the 70s by Dr. Feynman and so on. So the theory is there since a long time ago. The problem is to build a solution with that theory. Now there are some few prototypes working with few qubits that are only stable for a few milliseconds in situations close to the absolute zero Kelvin temperature, and it's, let's say, it will take, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years to have a quantum computer available for us, a quantum computer or a quantum accelerator in the way of a GPU accelerator that we have right now. But the idea is that, well, at some point it will be available, and from then we will need to develop these new algorithms for solving problems in a different way. And to solve this, what Atos has developed is what we call a QLM, a quantum learning machine, that basically brings two things. One is the ability to learn how to develop quantum algorithms. That is something that it's completely different. So you do not have programs, you have circuits, you do not have a deterministic solution, you have a statistical solution. So you need to learn this new wave of doing things. And for the second thing, you need to develop new algorithms taking advantage of these quantum properties. And this is something that you can start doing today. You don't need to wait until a quantum computer is available.
Cool. Natalia, anything to add to that?
Well, I would like to say that we would be very happy to host any kind of use case around quantum computing, quantum learning machine in genomics. So this is something we are really, really willing to have our hands on. You know, maybe the alignment part of a very simple pipeline or something like that, because we need to start little by little to build all the different elements.
Yeah. Before I ask another question, just a reminder to everyone, we've still got time for a few more questions. So please do pop them in the chat. But I'm curious, you know, I'm a life scientist also by background, but how can life scientists like us and people in genomics who are specialists in that field prepare themselves for the dawn of quantum computing? Do they need to shift their mindsets in any way or do anything special to prepare themselves to engage with this?
Well, this is something that I have been realizing for all my life between the scientist and the technology people. No, every time that you have to do something that is in between, you face the problem of knowing the problem, the scientific side, and knowing the technologies for provide solutions. And it's not easy to have this mixing of skills to work in this because normally for, you know, even it's a biologist or a physics, chemistry or whatever, knowing about computing, about artificial intelligence and so on is something that it's not very, let's say, close to achieve. So there are been starting some masters and programs, training programs for this. And from our center, we pretend to do also our contribution and to do some trainings in this sense to make people more close to the technology.
Cool. So how do you, we've heard a little bit about how you're hoping to support development of skills, but how do you see the Life Sciences Centre of Excellence supporting innovators and entrepreneurs in genomics and biodata? So there's people that have got great ideas and just need to make it happen.
Yeah, indeed. So this is going to be the right place to discuss innovations. The idea is that we are going to co-create together. So we would be very happy to host any innovator or entrepreneur to share a use case, and we helping them to choose what are going to be the most suitable technologies, a combination because don't forget that the innovation is not only in the use case, but also in the new ways of doing things that we used to do in the past. So in the case of quantum, adding the quantum feature to a use case is making it very, very relevant and innovative. So yes, in our center, we are going to explore all these technologies. It's a center for exploration of new technologies. We are going to have all these technologies available for users to play with them. So yes, this is our way in which we are going to help them to boost their innovations. Well, there is also the part of talent, how to support careers. In that sense, we are working in setting up a program. We don't know yet if it's going to be like a graduate, internship, or PhD program, or all together with our partners, especially with NetApp and Intel. And we have something also already set up with Intel around quantum computing for the drug discovery process.
Wow.
So yes, more to come. We are, constantly working in how to deliver, new ways of doing things, how to shape our services or added values.
Yeah. Another question that's just come in through the chat from Nehal again is saying, he's asking, are the trainings that Albert mentioned just now available online on the Atos website? So what's available right now?
Well, unfortunately, not yet, because we have just launched the center in the middle of this situation, so we cannot do all the things that we would like. I'm not sure. It's not been decided if the trainings will be available through the web, because these are very specific and it's not a general purpose thing. But maybe I take the point for the future.
Cool. We've had some really great questions now, and been on quite a journey with you guys already around quantum computing and edge and AI and HPC. And whilst we look at the final questions that come through, we're going to put a short poll onto the screens right now. The poll should only take about 10 seconds or so at the most to complete, and it's completely anonymous. And we would love and really value the honest feedback of all those who've attended today as we evolve our BioData Talks webinar series. For one of the questions that you'll see on the poll, we've actually listed some possible themes for future sessions. It's not an exhaustive list, so if you have other thoughts and suggestions and things that you'd like to hear about through BioData Talks, please do put them in the chat, and we'll pick up on those and explore those for the future. If there are any further questions right now for Natalia and Albert, we've got time for a couple more. Any we don't have time to answer, we will get back to you. I think one question that I'd like to ask you both, as we come towards the end of this session, is really about asking each of you as innovators about your hopes and aspirations for these technologies in the future. Where do you see the scope for innovation, and where do the next round of opportunities really lie?
Well, I would say that the first aspiration, at least for me, is that all those technologies that we have mostly available right now will be incorporated at maximum to improve the current methods and to allow new use cases. Therefore, our aim is to look at and to test practical applications of those technologies everywhere possible. And I think that after that, because this is mainly done in the research side, then the aim is to move this from the bench to the best side, and to move this from the production sectors, let's say hospitals, health systems, and so on, not only in the research side. So this would be my aspiration at the end.
So to get it out to the patient's bedside and to really right at the edge and right next to where it's needed.
I would say that I don't know if for somebody it may be new or not, but nowadays it's happening already that we are creating specific medicines for just one individual. And we know cases that, for example, for a specific cancer has developed a pill for one specific person because of some specific mutation in his genome. And with 4 pills, it has been recovered for a stage 3 of a cancer, for example. And people may be aware that it's happening today, not its futurist vision, it's already there.
Okay, okay. Natalia, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, are very in line with what Albert was saying, that, well, to speed up this translation of the breakthroughs that are being produced in research to the healthcare environment or any other kind of environment, to the production environment, to be able to, for example, imagine that in the framework of this kind of center of excellence, we managed to get an AI system to predict the likelihood of suffering breast cancer. Not to wait like 3 years, 4 years or whatever in order to get this to serve to the whole community, because we need these innovations to be, you know, at the bedside, you know, protecting people from suffering cancer. It's the predictive pillar that we need to work on.
Wow, it's so exciting, and it's been brilliant to hear from the two of you actually about what the future might look like with these technologies. Sadly, we are out of time now, so on behalf of everyone who's joined us today, I'd like to thank Natalia and Albert for being with us today and taking us on this journey of discovery to explore how these new technologies might shape the future for life sciences research and also for healthcare. And also to thank you out there who have joined us today. We hope you found the session informative and invaluable. And we'll be actually forwarding you an email very soon to share links to the recording of this webinar so you can listen to it again, or you can share it with others. And we'll also give you information on our next webinar. We will actually be back with BioData Talks on the 18th of August, so not that far away, where we'll be speaking with two really inspiring scientists from the Wellcome Sanger Institute, whose recent and very entrepreneurial collaboration has actually led to the development of a new diagnostic method for COVID-19, which has massive potential impact. So really looking forward to that one and speaking with them in about 3 or 4 weeks or so time. We hope you're able to join us again next time as well. But in the meantime, bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.